Hola, Vanessa. Hola, Vanessa.
Hola, que es que antes no sé qué he hecho, que me he salido del
Sí, ya he
ordenador
visto y estabas como
dos veces.
con
Luego,
dos iconos, efectivamente. Mm,
nada, me he salido totalmente. Digo, volvemos a entrar de cero y ya
ujú.
está. Hala. Es que me he puesto a cerrar ventanas y me he quedado
Claro,
sola, vamos, he cerrado
eso es lo que
todo.
pasa. Pues nada, ¿qué tal? Porque veo que estás aquí en la tercera intervención.
Sí.
Creo que tengo tu presentación.
Sí, si no la tengo yo
Sí, si te parece,
mostrar, si no hace falta.
cuando llegue tu turno, te hago coanfitriona y te
Muy
hace
bien.
cargo de la pantalla. Yo creo que eso es lo más
Sí.
cómodo. ¿Mm?
Sí, yo creo que también, pero bueno, como prefiráis, a mí no me importa. Pero bueno,
Sí, vamos, yo las tengo cargadas aquí en otro ordenador, si la tienes tú,
genial.
pues casi,
Sí,
casi
la tengo aquí
mejor.
en pantalla.
Ujú.
Bueno, pues a ver qué tal. La pena que este congreso haya sido todo virtual, porque es verdad que notas que, claro, la
Efectivamente.
gente, yo misma, te enganchas menos que cuando es
Mm.
virtual, que cuando es presencial. Eso sí que es verdad.
Claro, porque si vas a Dakar es que estás en Dakar y no puedes hacer otras cosas. Pero si estás aquí en
Sí,
tu sitio, es que tienes o clases o que asistir a alguna conferencia
sí,
o atender algún informe, en fin.
efectivamente. Sí, siempre tienes otra cosa, te empiezan a salir cosas. Sin embargo, cuando estás en el congreso. O sea, de
Claro,
ahí no te escapas. Es como
como
mucho para una
viajas,
llamada.
como
Mm.
viajas allí, y además que es una pena porque a mí me hacía mucha ilusión lo del viaje a Dakar, porque, vamos, yo no lo conozco. ¿Mm?
Ah, yo tampoco, sí,
¿Mm?
habría estado bien, pero bueno, es lo que tiene la pandemia.
Efectivamente. Fíjate, de estos congresos que se ha realizado en AMENET, solo el primero fue presencial. ¿Mm?
Qué pena.
Eh, en Tánger, que además fue muy, muy interesante. Fíjate que el de Tánger fue en noviembre del 19, es decir, cuatro o
Muy
cinco
poquito
meses
antes.
antes
Mm.
de que estuviésemos confinados. ¿Mm? De hecho, ya se estaba hablando un poquito, ¿no? Del virus que iba circulando, ¿no? ¿Mm? Pero bueno, yo estuve en ese congreso y la verdad que fue súper interesante. Y luego el de Las Palmas, Accra y este Dakar, pues son online. ¿Mm?
Ya. Bueno, a ver el próximo si ya puede ser
¿Mm?
presencial.
¿Mm? Este es el último de Amenet, además. ¿Mm?
¿Es el último?
Es el
Anda.
último de Amenet. Ya termina el proyecto. Me parece que ahora en noviembre termina y José María, que es el que está al frente del proyecto, tiene 3 o 4 meses para presentar los resultados a la Comisión Europea, según me dijo el otro día. Mm,
Ah, muy bien,
mm,
genial.
mm.
Pues bueno, esperemos a ver que si la Unión Europea hace un poquito de casito, tanto a África como a Latinoamérica, que los tiene un poco olvidados,
Mm.
en
El
realidad.
tema de África es muy importante ahora para ellos, ¿eh? Mm.
Sí,
Porque,
por el
claro,
tema
es que,
estratégico.
claro,
De,
claro,
bueno,
claro.
me refiero al tema de sostenibilidad, de energía y todo, energético. Es verdad
Ujú.
que se ha vuelto muy.
Y al tema de los
Aparte de la migración,
emigrantes, todo, todo,
claro.
todo. Mm.
Mm.
Yo creo que vamos a empezar un poquito más tarde porque se están extendiendo un poquito más en la otra sesión.
Ah, bien.
¿Eh? Lo que pasa es
Sí,
que ya veo que se están añadiendo, creo que aquí tenemos, Alejandro, ¿estás por aquí? Es el primer interviniente. No.
bueno,
Vamos a
todavía
esperar.
faltan 5
Sí,
minutos. Sí.
vamos a esperar un poquito. Voy a ver si puedo contactar con los organizadores. Salgo un momentito. Good afternoon, everybody. Now we are at the exact time of the beginning of the session, 1 minute more. And in order to be punctual, if you let me, we are to begin with this session, the session of Group Sank. We have 5 presentations in this schedule in this session. And if you want, we are to begin with the first one in the list. The first one is a presentation by Alejandro Regojo. Is about cryptocurrencies. The exact title is "Cryptocurrencies: Reflection for Africa's Development." Alejandro, I can see you through the screen. And if you need to share some documents, tell me, and I can give you the screen in order you can present something.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have any PowerPoint ready to presentation.
Okay. All right, perfect. Yeah. Then whenever you want, you can begin.
Okay, so as Jose Maria Mella asked me to join this a couple of months ago, I was just trying to summarize, because when you speak about Africa, there are some hot topics that comes to your mind very quickly and very easy in terms of social and democratic issues. Right now, I am working and also working with African people in terms of financial instruments, money, investment, lending, and all these kind of things. And it's, how to say, it's very interesting to see how my sector, the cryptocurrency and blockchain, has solved a lot of issues, because right now probably one of the biggest problems 10 years ago in Africa was the access to a bank system. And it's very funny because right now the lack of access to financial instruments in Africa, probably only from my point of view, but at least from my point of view, is the lack of knowledge. You don't have any more a lack of financial instruments, because it's a lack of being able to manage your crypto assets. Right now, you have in cryptocurrency all the systems and all the, let's call, money things you have out of the cryptocurrency system. So as any person in Africa can access to internet and to access to an iPhone or an Android, they already have access to a cryptocurrency sector. So they have access to bank level products. And it's very funny because from our sector, we have seen all these people with the excuse of not having a bank account, but this is not longer any problem. Me personally, I have been having meetups and other kind of events in Africa, especially in Ghana. And it was very funny how young people in Africa came to complain, oh, I don't have bank. In 1 year, the adoption of cryptocurrency and blockchain became like 10 years in the rest of the world. Because a young person and it was the topic of the events we created. The events, it was for young people in a couple of Ghana universities. And the thing it was, you don't have a bank account and you don't have a bank system, but you don't need a bank system. And it was very funny to see all these people, how to say, all these people joining this sector without a bank account, because most of us, we join it from fiat, from euros, from a bank transfer wise to crypto. But the very, very cool thing about these people is that, how to say, they didn't even have the step of having a banking account. They went directly to Bitcoin. It just, they had cash, nothing, and the next step it was Bitcoin. They never use the a middle point right now. I mean, people from 20 to 30 years old right now living in Africa already joining. Obviously, there are also a lot of people not joining this sector, but it was very funny from our sector to see all these African guys who don't need anything, and they are only in crypto right now. They don't even know how a bank transfer works, because they know cash and they know gold and they know crypto, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. And it was, how to say, I have seen very, very, very awesome things in terms of adoption of cryptocurrency there in Africa. There is a company in blockchain called Blockstream. They have developed a way to directly communicate from your house to a satellite to broadcast a Bitcoin transaction. That means I have seen people in Africa using this system to broadcast from their house rooftop directly with a satellite, a Bitcoin transaction. That means to jump the banks, but not having banks, just jump the system itself, because it's not even jumping the system. It's very funny because from now, their connection with the financial system, it's from the rooftop to a satellite. They don't understand anything. So what will happen with all these people get older and older, and they have never used a bank account, or they have never been, because there is something very clear in cryptocurrencies, blockchain, Bitcoin. It's something very hard to jump the knowledge gap. But as you work in cryptocurrencies, you never go back to fiat. So at this point, it's best, I mean, from my experience in young people in Africa and about crypto and technological, obviously very much bigger after COVID, but also before COVID, because it was where we were doing many things there. It was very funny to see all those communities to pass the process of 10 years of technological use in terms of months. Big communities broadcasting money, paying to people in other villages, communicating directly with a satellite, with a Bitcoin transaction. It's maybe something that looks like very tricky, very jig, and very freak. And it's actually the three of them. But the thing is, if something is very freak, if you have any other option. If you don't have any other option, it was the option to communicate with an international financial infrastructure, which, just to summarize, nowadays, it's $2.5 trillion. So it's something you can jump. It's much bigger. Crypto economy is much bigger than most of the African countries in terms of financial services. So these people is willing, and is happening. It's also happening in South America. It's jumping to a completely new, and it's funny in terms of some years ago, they could be saying, no, I don't have a bank account. But the real thing is that they don't really need it anymore. So I would like to see in the next year how it will go in terms of Africa development, because it was not by chance. We focused our deployment. We made a very big cryptocurrency back in 2017, and we focused all our efforts in Africa because it was not the best revenue stream of us. For us, it was a way to acknowledge young people there. So I would really love to see how these kind of cryptocurrencies will work with the African society. I know many projects working on there, from entrepreneurs like Akon, the singer, Mamadou, and all the executive working there. Also, you know, Michelle, who is making some tokens there focused in Africa. So I will look to see how this perform, because, you know, it's just about to connect your phone with internet connection. And from this point, you don't need any more. I'm not sure how long has to be every one of these speaking slots. So I will stop here. And if you're going to make me any question, or if you're going to moderate this thing, we can keep going.
Thank you, Alejandro. I think that this is a very, very controversial issues, the use of cryptocurrencies in all the world, and especially in Africa. And I think that there are many questions. We have some questions in the chat coming from Juan Antonio, but if you prefer, we can address all the questions at the end in order to have time enough for all the presentation. All right. Okay. Thank you, Alejandro. Now the next presentation is a presentation about ICT and deployment of financial markets in Africa. I am a co-author of this presentation, and the other co-author is Albert Agemand, although he's not in the official program, but I would like to underline that Albert Agemand is the other author. Sorry for not have a presentation, neither a presentation nor a paper, because at the moment the work is in progress and quantitative analysis are not finished yet. For the reason, and we can not carry out a formal presentation, but I would like to address to you a few words about that. Nevertheless, we want to underline the relevance of the ICT in economic and social growth in all the economic sector and in all social aspects in Africa. The point of our paper, which is in progress, as I told you, is to put forward a two-step relationship. First, is first to take into account is how the development and the deployment of ICT impact on financial sector. And the second is to analyze how financial industry development affects economic and social growth. More specifically, we are exploring the role of different ICT networks in the proposed analysis in our work in progress. These different networks are mobile and broadband fixed networks. Mobile extension or mobile deployments is allowing to improve financial inclusion for the people, especially the poor people. And the ratios of mobile penetration in Africa are good, not only good, are very good in relation with the GDP per capita, for example. But it is convenient to improve the quality of the network, of the mobile network, especially by evolving to extensive broadband mobile networks. We think that there are many mobile connections, but these connections are not from broadband networks. With respect to fixed networks and broadband fixed network, that is the more important, Africa is in a very low position at this moment. Even we can state that Africa is the worst in the world at this moment. But the jump in quality in this kind of network is a challenge in order to get a more advanced development of financial market. That is the purpose of of our work. And the development of financial market, we think that is a key issues to boost the economic growth. And these are our main conclusions, and we expect to have very soon the paper available. I have spent only 3 or 4 minutes, and this is good because we can have more time for the other presentation and also for the question to be addressed at the end. Sorry very much for not have to have the paper finished, but in some weeks, in a few weeks, we will have the paper ready for all the people. Thank you very much. Now we are to continue with the third presentation. The first presentation is from Vanessa Casadas, and the title is Innovation for Financial Access and its Impact in Financial Intermediation and Poverty Reduction. I'm going to share with Vanessa the screen. Please, one moment. I think that, Vanessa, you can share now your presentation.
Okay, yes, I can do it.
All right.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, it seems to slow down a little bit the connection with this, but okay. Well, this first of all, please note that this study has been done in 2015, and therefore some things probably require to be updated, but the main finding and the lesson learned from this paper, it's still something still up to date. So let's start with it. Well, first of all, when I did this study, I had to analyze the different concepts that were surrounding what a mobile payments with the internet, anything like this was. This study, what I wanted to do is to find if there was a correlation that related mobile money applications which were used in Africa, they were more common in Africa than in another area of the world, because of some things that we have already mentioned in this conference, and if there was a relation with this and poverty reduction and the improvement of the financial system. But first of all, I needed to clarify what I was talking about. So there were several concepts within literature. This literature could be either academical or even papers from consultancies, that terms were very often mistaken. So we could hear people talking about mobile payments, mobile banking, transfers, mobile money, and sometimes they were talking about the same things. Something that we could find in common is that when someone was talking about mobile payments, it was usually referred to a non-bank, while when they were talking about mobile banking, it was usually a service provided by a bank. Also, we could find some definitions. For example, mobile money, the European Union gave a definition that was money provided when it was money transacted by means that weren't a financial institution means. So something that all these concepts had in common, it was that mobile was a contactless payment. It could be a remote payment. The SIM card, which is very important, used to act as the identifier. This is very, very good when you don't have enough national IDs. But also we can see here in Spain, for example, we are using a system called Bizum that also links your telephone number with your bank account, which is more easy than to remember your whole bank account. So the SIM card could act as the identifier, and also retailers can act as a bank branch, because as we already mentioned, there aren't enough bank branches in Africa. This is something quite common, that retail banking is not as extended as other types of banking, which is investment banking, for example. Well, when we talk about this mobile money, about this deployment done by a technological company, not a financial institution, this is really important to know. We first of all need to understand what's the difference and how it works. When we're talking about a financial institution or a payment service provider, for example, Apple Pay is a payment service provider, what we're talking is about a payment which is still done through the payment system. I mean, it still goes from one bank account to another bank account and it goes through a clearinghouse. What was different about the mobile money, in this case, M-Pesa, but right now where we could hear about cryptocurrencies, is also a system that doesn't follow the bank or payment services provider typical flow, is that the whole transaction was done through the technological company, in this case, Safaricom, which was part of Vodafone in Africa. And what happened is that the retailers of M-Pesa, which could be also shops where you can buy even food, did act as a bank branch. So you could go there, put your money into the system, so you can transact with it, and also you can go there and get the money, cash out the money that you have received. All of this at that time, please note that it was 2015, it was done through SMS bank, through an SMS, because the internet correlations weren't as common as nowadays. And this is one of the most important lessons learned, is that here, the company Safaricom, instead of trying to make their customers change, what they did is they tried to change. So instead of Vodafone thinking, okay, I'm going to take a solution that I'm doing in London, which is working, they said, okay, this is what I got in Africa, so I'm going to do something that works for people in Africa. Why? Well, it's very important that not only that people can access easily to this, because it was a financial access idea, also it's very important to note that a payment can only be done if both people, the person who sends the money and the person who receives it, are willing to accept that payment system. As an example, if you want to pay with a credit card in the middle of the desert, that's going to be impossible. But if you pay with cash, they're likely to accept it. So that's the same thing. If you want to pay through a payment mean, both ends need to accept that. And it was very easy to accept because there were retailers anywhere. So what happened is, well, first of all, we have to understand that this system had to leverage something very, very important. First of all, was that an innovation, it doesn't matter how do you define innovation, it always includes the word new. It has to be something new. And on the other side, we had the financial authority point of view, who were concerned about the stability of the financial system, about the whole stability of the economy. So they tend to be very conservative. So what happened with that? That they had to leverage this. Okay, how can we innovate, try something new, but without damaging the system if it doesn't work? And what they did is something quite clever. And it was that Safaricom had to create a pool bank account in the Central Bank of Kenya. And this pool bank account had a deposit of money with all the money that was being transacted at the time. For example, if there were payments going through one end to the other end for, $100, the Bank of Kenya needed to have $100 in that pool account. So in case Safaricom failed by any reason, they could give their money back to the people who were transacted the money. So it was safe. And this was done. So the financial stability, which was the Central Bank of Kenya, said, okay, let's try it, because I felt that no damage can be done. And also, please note that you could do this because we're talking here about micropayments, so very, very small payments. Although it was a lot of money being transacted for a lot of people, it was a very small amount of money. So lots of transactions, but very, very small. Well, also, why the whole point of this study? Why is important financial inclusion? What's the whole point of that? Well, according to literature, financial inclusion is considered one of the sources of poverty reduction. There are several studies done around the world, for example, in South America, I think there are quite a lot, could link the use of to bancarization, what we can call Americanization, which is start using a financial service from financial or any kind of institution, they say that it has lots of several spillovers. Which spillovers? Well, it helps people to get savings, people who before weren't saving. Also, it's the entry door for another financial services. So savings, financial services means that you can get credit, you can start a business, which is entrepreneurship. Also, your money is safe. That's why you can save and you're not worried that it's not going to disappear. And finally, just give you access to a formal economy. So you are excited with other people, you can start a formal business, you can start a formal life with all that it implies. But also, this obviously wasn't in 2015, there are other two reasons of why it's important financial inclusion, which related to COVID-19, which is first clean, because it gives you access to virtual money, which is a credit card or any other type of payment, is clean because you don't need to touch money and coins. I don't know if maybe you don't know this, but China during the crisis, they cleaned all their money, all their physical money, because they were worried that it could be a vector to share the COVID-19 virus. And also it allows you to make remote payments, which during the COVID-19 crisis was very important because we were confined, we couldn't travel. So remote payments became very, very, very important at the time. So the study, does better access to financial services provided by mobile money contribute to poverty reduction in sub-Saharan Africa? Well, according to the literature review, yes, it did. It helped a lot with entrepreneurship. It reduces risk of informal channels. They talk about several benefits, but there was a literature gap, at least at that time. And it's that there wasn't an empirical quantitative evidence that there was a relation of a good financial access tool boosted by mobile money and poverty reduction based on a cost-country basis. Most of the studies were quantitative, were talking to people, telling the experience, telling, oh yes, well, I started doing this and now look, I got a business. Obviously, it's a scientific knowledge because it's not that it's wrong, but it was very difficult to extrapolate. So I worked on a cross-country study, which was based on a model provided by Thorsten Beck, who has done several studies regarding financial access and its effects in the economy. And his conclusion was that greater financial development induces the incomes of the poor to grow faster. So basically, we could say that good financial development help people not to be as poor. But first of all, I wanted to introduce also indicators related to formal financial access. But what was the problem? Please remember that we are talking about micropayments, not very, very big payments. So I couldn't just try to create a model saying, okay, let's look how the financial access helps people becoming poor, because we're talking about something very, very small. Unless you do a case study, it's very difficult to track down. So the study was done in two parts. First part was to analyze if this new tool of financial access did help the whole financial system, and then following this study, try to see if a good financial system, a healthy financial system, improved poverty reduction. And the difference was here the sample that was being used, because most studies were on a world level, on other areas, but not in those countries. That at 2015 were 40 countries of the sub-Saharan Africa region classified as low income or middle income at 2015, okay? So these were the indicators according to literature. Basically, the financial system performance is always measured as private credit given by banks. If banks are moving the money, given credit means that the financial system works well because it is increasing economy. So that's why it's the main indicator to define if it has a good performance of a financial system. And also, well, the financial access, here I took into account branches and also the mobile money accounts. This is very sad because I was using the financial access survey, which was financed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but unfortunately, this survey seems to be discontinued. So one of the good things would be to update this study, but it's going to be quite difficult because those indicators no longer exist. As I'm not going to get into all indicators, the other side are the ones related to reduction of poverty, which are poverty gap and poverty mean. And the results were this. Regarding the financial system performance, remember, again, as I said, that we're talking about micropayments, a very small amount of money. I was very satisfied with the study because I could see that, well, these are probably the most obvious examples of analysis, but I did try several models, and all the models gave me the same result. And it was that, yes, mobile money will have a positive relation with the indicator of private credit given by banks. Therefore, I could say that, yes, financial mobile money is helping the financial system. And this is really, really good because, as I mentioned before, financial authorities are always very worried how those innovations will affect the whole financial system. And here we can say, well, it's positively affecting it. It's not only giving a positive feedback to people, it's also being good for the whole financial system. This is a very, very good result. Unfortunately, the one regarding reduction of poverty, which it's strange because there are several models already been built on that, it didn't work in this case because I did try several models and the results were sometimes that it was a positive correlation, sometimes was a negative, so it was not conclusive. What were the conclusions? Well, as already said, yes, this opening the doors for financial innovations has positive effects for the whole financial system, which is a lesson for regulators. But the other part of the study, as I mentioned, didn't really work. And well, this was basically the study. Later on, if you want, we can have some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Now, the fourth presentation is a presentation by Kwasi Ahiei, and the title is Effect of Financial Development on Economic Growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. Kwasi, is Kwasi at the virtual room? I am not seeing Kwasi. I think that Kwasi is not with us. Then we are to the next presentation, that is the last presentation. The last presentation is by Euphrasie Caningini, and this presentation is in French, and the title is Adoption du commerce électronique comme stratégie de résilience de l'entrepreneuriat féminin à Bukavu. Euphrasie, si?
Fernando, please, just a moment. I think Kwasi Ahiei is there.
Is here Kwasi?
Yes. My screens show up in the last
That's
position.
right. Kwasi have just entered to the virtual room. Kwasi, are you here, Kwasi?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, that's perfect. I'm sorry very much because I didn't see you in the virtual room.
Okay.
Then Kwasi, if you want, you can start with your presentation. If you need, I'm going to prepare the session in order you can share your presentation. Do you have a presentation or is only a speech?
Yeah, I have a presentation.
All right. Let me 1 minute in order to arrange the Zoom. I think that you can share the screen.
Okay. Okay. So the topic is on effect of financial development on economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. And we want to investigate whether threshold matters. So, and when we talk about threshold, we mean what minimum level or maximum level of financial development that will influence economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. The objective of this research is to analyze the effect of financial development on economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. Over the years, scholars have researched into how financial development affects economic growth. But what they found was a mixed result. Some found positive effects, whilst others found negative effects. And in fact, others also established that there's no effect. So this prompted a new direction as to the nature of the relationship between financial development and economic growth. And the nature has to do with non-linear relationship between financial development and economic growth. That is, there should be a certain level of financial development that will trigger economic growth, or there should be some enabling environment such as institutional quality like political stability, ensuring law and order that will ensure that the financial sector development will trigger economic growth. These were propounded by Greenwood and Ivanovich, 1990, and the others. So based on this theoretical foundation that for financial development to stimulate economic growth, there should be some minimum level of threshold, or there should be some maximum level of development that will ensure growth. We intended to examine such a relationship. So first, we use banking. So obviously, when we talk about financial development, it's a very broad concept. So we narrow it into banking sector development and then stock market development. So in terms of the banking sector development, we use M2 to GDP ratio and credit to GDP ratio as indicators of banking sector development. So the first objective is to examine the threshold levels of M2 to GDP and then the credit to GDP that impact on economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. We also explored the threshold conditions for institutional environment and economic environment that will help banking sector development to trigger economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. So theoretically speaking, Asimoglu and Zivolity highlight the potential threshold variable that will ensure that finance and growth will have positive relationship. Greenwood and Jovanovic also talk about the initial GDP per capita and institutional variables that will mediate the relationship between finance and economic growth. This is not the first time of exploring non-linear relationship between financial development and economic growth across the globe. In fact, Ibrahim and Alegede 2017 examined the non-linearity between financial development and economic growth by using credit to GDP ratio as indicator of financial development. And indeed, they established threshold level. Alabadi and Masi 2016 also examined threshold effect in Malaysia. They also established that there's a threshold level in which credit expansion will spur economic growth in Malaysia. Gazada and Sheriff 2015 also did such a study. However, our study is different from the existing ones in the sense that in Sub-Saharan Africa, no work has been done with regards to exploring the threshold level of stock market development that will ensure that economic growth is stimulated. Moreover, no work has examined the threshold level of institutional quality variable like political stability, law and order, that will ensure that when financial sector is developing, it will trigger on economic growth. So this is the first time that we are exploring such non-linear a complex relationship between financial development and economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa, focusing on banking sector development and then stock market development. So upon exploring the literature and using the endogenous growth model, this is the final model that we arrive at. The GY is a dependent variable, which is a GDP per capita growth. So we are using GDP per capita growth as indicator of economic growth. Then the FD in the model is a financial development, which comprises credit to GDP ratio, M2 to GDP ratio, stock market capitalization to GDP ratio, stock turnover to GDP ratio, and stock traded to GDP ratio. So these are the basic indicators that we are using to represent financial development with regards to banking sector development and then the stock market development. We cannot examine financial sector development and economic growth without accounting for the traditional factors that have been established in the endogenous growth model that accounts for economic growth. So aside financial sector indicators, we also control for human capital development, which is represented by HC, inflation, which is represented by CPI, open represent trade to GDP ratio, and then GOV is a government expenditure, which has been established by Barrow, Savay, and Martin, that they also play significant role in enhancing economic growth. So if you check the first model, we have FD less than or equal to gamma, and this side, FD greater than gamma. The gamma in the bracket represent the threshold figure. So if financial development is below that particular threshold, what is its impact on economic growth? And if it exceeds the threshold, what is its impact on economic growth? Then, aside that, we also wanted to explore the mediating condition threshold, that is the institutional quality threshold and then economic environment threshold. In terms of the institutional quality, we use political stability, law and order, democratic accountability, control of corruption, and then we use bureaucratic quality. And in terms of the economic environment, we use the initial GDP per capita growth. So the X there represent the mediating factors, which I have already mentioned. So they also have to achieve or reach a particular level of threshold in order to enable financial sector development to spur economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. Right. So we gathered the data from 1990 to 2019, and this time scope is based on the fact that most of the stock market in sub-Saharan Africa were established in the early 90s. So we cannot go backwards because most of them were not established. And then we solved these variables from the World Bank development indicators and then the country risk data for various institutional variables. So we use the Hansen 2000 threshold technique to explore what threshold level. And as I explained earlier, when we say threshold, we mean what minimum level of financial development or what is the maximum level of financial development that will ensure that it's fair growth. Likewise, the institutional variables. So we use a Hansen 2000 threshold estimator to achieve such an objective. So these are the results. If you recall, I mentioned earlier that we are focusing on banking sector development and then stock market development. So in terms of the banking sector development, we use M2 to GDP ratio and then credit to GDP ratio as indicators of banking sector development. And the M2 to GDP ratio measures the size of the banking sector relative to the overall economy. And then the credit to GDP ratio measures the financial intermediation activities of the banking sector. So we want to explore what size of the banking sector should reach in order to stimulate economic growth, the minimum or the maximum level. And then what level of financial intermediation activity should reach in order for banking sector activity to trigger economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. So upon using the Hansen threshold technique to estimate the threshold for M2, we found double threshold. And when we say double threshold, it means that we have 1 point, and if you fall below that point, that will be the impact. And there's another extreme point. If you break that point, that will be another. So if you remember the liquidity trap of poverty as a cubic kind of curvature, will help us to appreciate what we mean by the double threshold. So the first threshold is 5.96%, and then the second threshold is 7.60%. We have indicated model 1 up to model 5. The model 1, the variations in the model account for the variations in the choice of institutional quality. So as I mentioned earlier, we are using 5 institutional variables: political stability, corruption, law and order, democratic accountability, and then bureaucratic quality. So model 1 is where we include political stability. 2 is where we include the control of corruption. Then 3 is where
I'm sorry, Kwasi. I'm sorry. Could you summarize and take only a couple of minutes to finish, because we are in a rush in order to finish at 4:30. I'm sorry.
Okay. Right. So
thank you.
Upon getting these results, these are the conclusions that we were able to draw. We established that countries in the region, and when we say the region, we mean sub-Saharan Africa. We established that the countries in the region must not exceed a threshold level of 5.96% broad money to GDP ratio. Because if they exceed, then financial development or the banking sector development will have a negative impact on economic growth. So for them to ensure that the size of the banking sector trigger economic growth, it must not reach beyond 5.9%. We also find that certain threshold of institutional environment must be met before they can effectively moderate the contribution of broad money to GDP ratio. And as I mentioned earlier, these institutional environments were political stability, law and order, control of corruption, and others. Further, we also established that credit to GDP ratio threshold must be 1.86%. If it falls below this, then financial intermediation activity by the banking sector will have negative impact on economic growth, because what it means is that few credit will be rationed among the potential borrowers, which might not be enough, and it might create some illegal activities. Then we also find threshold environment that must be met before credit to GDP ratio will have significant impact on economic growth. So given these conclusions, we make the following recommendation. So given these findings, we recommend that countries implement policy to make their institutional environment conducive to enable financial development to stimulate economic growth in their respective countries. Also, policy options available to government to achieve these targets include those that emphasize improvement in institutional quality, such as enhanced legal protection of property rights, ease of doing business, and greater governance effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwasi.
Yeah.
And now we have 10 minutes for the last presentation. The last presentation is in French. C'est la présentation de Euphrasi Kaningini. Euphrasi, quand vous voulez.
Oui, 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 je suis là. Je peux commencer?
Just a moment that I can enable you in order you can share the screen.
Yeah. Il faut d'abord que Kwasi puisse enlever les partages d'écran.
Kwasi,
yes.
You should finish with your presentation.
Okay.
You should enable.
Okay.
Okay. Because I have lost the control of the presentation. And let me see. All right. Je crois que tu peux dans ce moment, Euphrasi.
Je ne suis pas toujours capable de partager.
Je crois que c'est possible.
Ah oui. Vous voyez mes slides?
Oui.
Ça va?
Ça va.
Ok, je vais commencer. Merci beaucoup pour la parole accordée. Moi, je suis Euphrasi Kaningini de l'Université évangélique en Afrique en RDC. Je suis assistante dans la faculté des sciences économiques et de gestion. Ce soir, je vais vous présenter ma recherche qui porte sur la donne du commerce électronique comme stratégie de résilience de l'entrepreneuriat féminin à Bukavu. Comme vous le voyez, mon exposé va s'articuler autour de 6 grands points. Je ne vais pas maintenant entrer en détail, je passe directement au point suivant qui est la problématique de la recherche. La République démocratique du Congo est un pays très riche, mais sa population vit en dessous du seuil de pauvreté. Elle est classée parmi les pays les plus pauvres de la planète. Tous les indicateurs sont en rouge. Pas d'infrastructures routières, sécurité précaire, manque d'électricité, d'eau potable et bien d'autres choses. On a constaté que 70% des jeunes Congolais sont au chômage. Et selon certaines études, ce sont beaucoup plus de femmes qui sont sans emploi et celles qui sont employées ont un salaire dérisoire. Pour ce faire, ces femmes créent des micro, moyennes et petites entreprises en vue de subvenir aux besoins de leur famille et assurer leur autonomie et indépendance. Comme constat, ces femmes se heurtent à plusieurs difficultés telles que le manque de financement, le manque de soutien, d'encadrement. Elles sont aussi sujettes à plusieurs préjugés. Donc, on constate que les entreprises de ces femmes-là sont contraintes de s'arrêter ou bien elles voient leur activité stagner. Avec l'apparition de la crise sanitaire, la situation précaire de ces femmes s'est aggravée car il y a eu paralysie des activités économiques suite aux mesures prises par le gouvernement congolais dans le but de lutter contre la propagation de la COVID-19. Face à cette situation, certains auteurs pensent qu'il est temps que les entreprises africaines, en général et congolaises en particulier, puissent se digitaliser pour faire face à cette situation. Outre l'objectif principal qui est d'analyser les facteurs qui peuvent influencer l'intention d'adoption ou de non-adoption du commerce électronique par les femmes entrepreneurs de la ville de Bukavu durant cette période de crise sanitaire, ce travail aussi poursuit comme objectif l'identification des caractéristiques des femmes entrepreneurs de la ville de Bukavu, l'identification aussi des freins liés à l'adoption du commerce électronique et enfin, la proposition des pistes susceptibles de renforcer les mesures de cette adoption. Pour atteindre notre objectif principal, nous nous sommes appuyés sur le modèle du comportement planifié de Atzen. Cette théorie montre que le comportement d'un individu est influencé par l'intention comportementale qui, à son tour, est aussi influencé par l'attitude envers le comportement, les normes subjectives et les contrôles perçus. Comme le montrent ces schémas, seule la variable de contrôle perçu a une influence sur l'intention comportementale et sur les comportements. En ce qui concerne les hypothèses, étant donné que notre objectif principal est d'analyser l'intention d'adoption du commerce électronique, notre modèle s'est juste limité à la variable intention en omettant la variable comportement que nous venons de voir dans la slide précédente. Ainsi, nous avons formulé nos hypothèses de la manière suivante. Plus l'attitude envers l'adoption du commerce électronique des femmes entrepreneurs augmente positivement, plus l'intention de l'adopter est élevée. La deuxième hypothèse, les normes subjectives influenceraient d'une manière positive l'intention d'adopter le commerce électronique par les femmes commerçantes de la ville de Bukavu. La troisième hypothèse, l'intention d'adoption du commerce électronique de femmes entrepreneurs sera influencée d'une manière négative par le contrôle comportemental perçu au cas où les femmes ne se sentiraient pas capables d'adopter le commerce électronique avec succès et obtenir les résultats escomptés. En ce qui concerne la méthodologie, nous avons échantillonné 282 femmes propriétaires de PME dans le secteur du commerce. Comme outil, nous avons utilisé le questionnaire d'enquête avec des items inspirés des travaux antérieurs portant sur l'adoption du commerce électronique. Pour ce qui est de l'analyse des résultats, on a eu recours à l'analyse statistique descriptive et la modélisation par équation structurelle avec la régression PLS. En guise de résultats plutôt, à ce niveau, tout d'abord, nous allons présenter les caractéristiques socio-démographiques et économiques de notre échantillon, comme c'était parmi les objectifs spécifiques de notre travail. Ensuite, nous allons passer sur l'analyse de l'intention d'adoption du commerce électronique. Ainsi, nous avons constaté que 70% de nos enquêtés avaient l'âge qui était compris entre 18 et 57 ans. Pouvons dire que les femmes entrepreneurs de la ville de Bukavu sont encore jeunes. La majorité de ces femmes étaient des mariées et avaient un niveau d'études universitaires et secondaires. Donc, la plupart d'eux avaient un niveau universitaire et secondaire. Donc, il n'y avait pas des analphabètes et ceux qui ont fait seulement l'école primaire. Comme localisation, on a constaté que sur 3 communes qui constituent la ville de Bukavu, la majorité de ces femmes-là sont logées dans la commune d'Ibanda. La raison qu'on peut évoquer ici, c'est la commune qui est beaucoup plus, comment je peux dire, urbanisée par rapport à d'autres. Et avec leur standing, on a pensé que c'est pour cela qu'elles ont choisi de loger là-bas. Nous avons constaté que 87% de nos enquêtés aussi sont enregistrés au registre du commerce. Et en ce qui concerne le capital de démarrage, 91% de ces femmes entrepreneurs ont commencé leur entreprise avec un capital compris entre 100 et 10 000 dollars américains. Nous avons aussi trouvé que ces femmes entrepreneurs, 99% d'elles emploient de personnes entre 1 et 10 personnes. On a aussi constaté que leurs entreprises sont encore jeunes parce que 87,8% de ces entreprises ont un âge qui est compris entre 1 et 15 ans. En ce qui concerne les fonds de démarrage, on a constaté que les fonds propres, les aides familiales et l'aide du mari constituent les 3 sources de revenus des fonds de démarrage. Subvenir aux besoins du ménage, rentabilité de l'activité et besoin d'autonomie et d'épanouissement sont les 3 motifs de création des entreprises de ces femmes entrepreneurs. Enfin, pour ce qui est de la première partie de nos analyses, on a constaté que tous les produits vendus dans la ville de Bukavu sont importés et proviennent en majorité à Dubaï, Chine, Ouganda et Tanzanie. Ces résultats ont prouvé à suffisance que la République démocratique du Congo ne produit presque rien. Tout est importé. Pour ce qui est de l'analyse de l'intention d'adoption du commerce électronique, qui est le point clé de notre travail, avant de procéder à la régression par la modélisation des équations structurelles, nous avons commencé d'abord à faire l'analyse descriptive de la variable dépendante. Il ressort de ces tableaux que la moyenne du construit intention d'adoption du commerce électronique est de 4,72. Si nous essayons de convertir cette moyenne en pourcentage, ces résultats nous disent que 60% de femmes entrepreneurs de la ville de Bukavu, plus de 60% ont l'intention d'adopter les commerces électroniques. Nous avons aussi essayé de faire une corrélation entre les variables étudiées. Et ce tableau nous montre que seule la variable contrôle comportemental perçu n'est pas corrélée à la variable dépendante de l'intention d'adoption du commerce électronique. Mais comme nous le savons bien, la corrélation n'est pas synonyme de causalité. C'est pour cela que nous allons procéder à la régression tout en intégrant la variable contrôle comportemental perçu, même si cette variable n'a pas été corrélée à la variable dépendante qui est l'intention d'adoption. Alors, pour tester nos hypothèses à l'aide de... Pardon? Pour tester nos hypothèses à l'aide de la modélisation par équation structurelle, plusieurs étapes doivent être réalisées, mais nous n'allons pas tout détailler. Ainsi, ces tableaux présents nous montrent les résultats de la première estimation de notre modèle après avoir retiré la variable contrôle perçue avec tous ces items, ainsi que l'item 2 de la variable norme subjective. Cela signifie qu'après la première estimation du modèle, les variables et items à retenir doivent remplir certaines conditions, à savoir l'alpha de Cronbach et la fiabilité composite doivent être supérieures. Les coefficients doivent être supérieur à 0,7. L'average variance extraite doit être aussi supérieur à 0,5. Et tous les items doivent avoir des charges externes supérieures à 0,7. C'est que la variable contrôle perçu et l'item là n'ont pas réussi ces conditions là-bas. Ainsi, nous voyons que ce tableau est le résultat de notre régression.
Pardon, Euphrasy, pouvez-vous conclure dans 2 minutes?
Oui, je peux conclure dans 2 minutes. Alors, ce tableau nous montre que les deux variables retenues après les premiers tests que nous venons de voir sur la slide précédente, attitude envers l'adoption et les normes subjectives sont les 2 variables qui sont significatives. Donc, ce sont les 2 variables qui influencent l'adoption du commerce électronique des femmes commerçantes de la ville de Bukavu. Schématiquement, là, on peut les présenter comme ça, de cette manière. Ainsi, comme recommandation, nous avons vu que l'attitude et les normes subjectives sont des variables qui influenceraient l'adoption du commerce électronique. Or, l'attitude est une variable qui peut changer à tout moment. Ainsi, comme nous avons vu que ces femmes-là sont prêtes à adopter le commerce électronique, nous avons suggéré à l'État congolais des conditions sécuritaires parce que l'insécurité a été dénotée comme un frein à l'adoption du commerce électronique. Deuxième recommandation, c'est adopter des lois appropriées par les législatifs sur la cybercriminalité, car avec les rapports de la GSMA, il s'est remarqué qu'en RDC, aucune loi en matière de protection des clients des vendeurs et des acheteurs au niveau de l'électronique n'a jamais été adopté. Troisième recommandation, on a recommandé au gouvernement congolais de faire un travail holistique entre ministères afin de doter à la population des infrastructures routières et un Internet à haut débit pour que les transactions avec l'e-commerce puissent être satisfaisantes. Merci pour votre écoute.
Merci beaucoup, Euphrasi, pour votre représentation. I think that we have not time enough in order to address all the questions. There are many questions from the floor, but the farewell ceremony is scheduled at 4:30, and I think that we have not time in order to address the question. Unless Jose Maria let us 5 minutes. I don't know, Jose Maria, if we can spend 5 minutes in question. I don't know if Jose Maria is here. I think we have not time in order to address the question. Sorry very much for that. And then we should finish this interesting session with all your presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Au revoir.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much.